Mysterious village without a name. On mist-covered roads where maps cannot trace, there is a village no one knows the name of. Those who accidentally step into this place never return. Juan, a long-haul driver, was simply heading home after a late trip, but then in the middle of the night the fog surrounded him, pulling him into a world he could not explain. The familiar road disappeared. The houses stood silent in the darkness. Faint figures moved within the mist, and whispers called his name. As the way out slowly faded, as past and present blended into a never-ending nightmare, Huang had only one choice: move forward. But what was ahead? A mystery with no answer, a secret no one can escape. A place you may have seen before in your dreams. Will you dare step into the nameless village? Follow now to uncover the secrets hidden within the mist. Drizzle misted through the dark night. Huang, a long-haul driver, was trying to complete his last trip before heading home. The familiar highway suddenly became unrecognizable as dense fog enveloped his truck. Even with the headlights on full beam, visibility was no more than a few meters. Suddenly, a figure appeared right in the middle of the road. Huang jerked the wheel, his tires screeched on the slippery asphalt. The truck skidded, barely avoiding the steep roadside drop. Panting, his heart pounding, he checked the rearview mirror, but there was no one there. A shiver ran down his spine. Huang looked around. No streetlights, no road signs, only a narrow dirt path leading into the thick fog. His GPS flickered erratically before going completely black. With no other option, he decided to turn off the engine, step out of the truck, and look for help. In the distance, a faint light shimmered through the mist. A small village lay ahead. Will you dare to take the next step into the unknown? Huang took slow, cautious steps toward the village. The mist swirled around his feet, whispering like unseen voices in the night. The air smelled damp and ancient, as if untouched by time. As he crossed the threshold into the village, the silence pressed in on him. No barking dogs, no rustling leaves, not even the hum of insects. Only the faint flickering of lanterns hanging from wooden posts lining the narrow stone-paved street. The houses stood still, their wooden doors slightly ajar, as if someone had just left in a hurry. Some windows glowed dimly from within, but no shadows moved inside. The village seemed alive yet devoid of people. "Hello," Huang called out, his voice swallowed by the dense fog. No response. He approached the nearest house, its door creaked open at the lightest touch. Inside, dust blanketed the furniture, yet a kettle still steamed on the table. He reached out, touching the teacup. It was warm. A sharp noise echoed outside, a dragging sound, slow, deliberate. Huang turned, his breath hitching in his throat. In the distance, just beyond the flickering light of a lantern, a figure stood motionless, watching him. Who was that? Why was the village abandoned, yet still strangely alive? Huang had just stepped into something far beyond his understanding. And there was no turning back. Will you keep walking deeper into the unknown? Huang's breath was shallow as he stared at the unmoving figure in the fog. It was standing at the very edge of the lantern's light, as if afraid to step forward. The silence felt unnatural, thick, suffocating. Huang took a step back. As he did so, the figure tilted, its head slightly, a slow, almost inquisitive motion. Then, without warning, it vanished into the mist. A cold shiver crawled up Huang's spine. He had seen it. He was sure of it. Something was there watching him. The wind picked up slightly, stirring the hanging lanterns and casting erratic shadows against the stone-paved streets. But something was wrong. The shadows moved. Not with the wind, but on their own. One stretched unnaturally along the wall of an abandoned house, twisting as if reaching for something. Another flickered as if someone had passed in front of the lantern, yet no one was there. Huang swallowed hard, his instincts screaming at him to leave. But where would he go? The road had disappeared into the fog. The truck was nowhere in sight. A sound whispered through the village, a soft, dry rustling like cloth dragging against the ground. Huang turned slowly. The doors of the houses that had been slightly open before were now wide open. And inside he could see them, dark figures lurking in the shadows, shifting ever so slightly as if waiting for something. Huang clenched his fists, forcing himself to take a step forward. His legs felt heavy, like he was walking through water. Then a voice rang out, a whisper, but clear and right beside his ear. "You shouldn't have come. Will you take the next step into the unknown?" Hong's breath came in short gasps, his body frozen in place. The shadows inside the houses moved, subtly shifting in the darkness, yet they did not step out. They just watched the air around him thicken, growing heavier, as if pressing down on his chest. Then came the whispers, soft disjointed voices speaking in a language Huang couldn't understand. They echoed from the open doorways, from the cracks in the wooden walls, from beneath the mist that curled at his feet. One voice, then two, then dozens. The lanterns flickered their golden glow, dimming as if something unseen was sucking the light away. Huang clenched his fists, forcing himself to take a step forward. His pulse hammered against his skull, but he couldn't just stand there. A movement caught his eye. One of the figures shifted. Slowly, one long skeletal hand reached out from the darkness of a house, its fingers stretching toward him. Huang stumbled backward, his heartbeat roaring in his ears, then silence. The whisper stopped, the mist held still, even the wind dared not move. And then a single voice whispered directly behind him. "Run, will you take the next step deeper into the unknown?" Huang didn't think he ran. His feet pounded against the damp stone street as he bolted past the open houses, their empty doorways gaping like mouths. The mist clung to him, slowing his movement as if unseen hands were trying to drag him back. The whispers returned, louder, overlapping, filling his ears with a cacophony of unintelligible voices. Then a new sound joined them, a dragging noise, heavy, deliberate, like something long and skeletal scraping against the ground. Huang didn't dare turn around, but he felt it. Something was behind him. The street stretched endlessly before him, no longer resembling the village he had first seen. The lanterns flickered more erratically, their glow twisting shadows into impossible shapes. A sudden force gripped his ankle. Huang fell hard, his hands scraping against the rough stone. Heart racing, he turned his head and saw it. A hand, long fingers, bony and pale, clutching his leg. It emerged from the mist, grasping with unnatural strength. Not a person's hand, but something else, something wrong. It pulled. Huang kicked frantically, his boot connecting with something solid yet ice cold. The grip loosened for a fraction of a second, just enough for him to scramble away. Panting, he staggered to his feet. Ahead in the distance, he saw it again. The figure from before, standing perfectly still at the edge of the fog, watching. Waiting, then it whispered, "You cannot leave. Will you dare to continue deeper into the unknown?" Holmes' breath was ragged, his chest heaving as he staggered backward. The skeletal hand that had grasped him was gone, swallowed by the mist, but something was still watching. The figure at the edge of the fog remained unmoving, its presence more chilling than ever. Then it took a step forward. Holmes' pulse spiked, his instincts screaming at him to run. But his legs felt rooted to the ground, as if the village itself had wrapped invisible chains around him. The figure was getting closer. With each step, the mist curled and shifted around it. The flickering lanterns dimmed, their glow flickering unnaturally, as if the very light feared what was approaching. Huang clenched his fists, forcing himself to move. He turned down an alleyway between the old, wooden houses, his boots echoing eerily against the damp stone. The whispers started again. They slithered through the air, rising from the cracks in the walls, from beneath the doors, from the mist itself. Faint yet urgent, as if trying to tell him something. Then he saw them. Faint figures hidden in the windows and darkened doorways, watching. Not moving, just watching. Huang kept moving, his heartbeat hammering in his ears. He needed to find a way out. Ahead, the alley twisted sharply, disappearing into deeper darkness. Behind him, footsteps followed, slow and deliberate. Then a whisper cut through the air, a single word chilling in its simplicity. "Stay, will you take the next step into the unknown?" Huang ran. The narrow alley twisted ahead of him, stretching deeper into the village like a never-ending maze. Behind him, the whispers grew louder, forming unintelligible murmurs that pressed against his mind. The mist thickened, curling around his legs, trying to slow him down. Then the shadows moved again, not just flickering like before, but shifting, stretching, reaching out toward him. They slithered across the walls of the wooden houses, crawling like living things. Huang gasped as a shadow detached itself from the wall and stepped into the alley ahead of him. It had no face, no eyes, just a void darker than the night itself. His breath caught as more figures emerged from the mist ahead, blocking his path. He turned to run back, but the alley behind him had disappeared, swallowed by a darkness deeper than the mist. The whispers turned into a single voice, low and rasping. "Why do you run?" The figures in front of him began to move closer, their limbs unnatural, as if bending at wrong angles. Huang's body trembled, his mind screamed for escape, but there was nowhere left to go. And then, just for a second, the mist parted. At the far end of the alley, he saw something. A wooden gate slightly open, flickering lanterns beyond it. An exit, if he could just reach it. With one final breath, he lunged forward, forcing himself through the figures that were closing in. The moment he passed through them, a chill shot through his body, his vision darkening for an instant, as if he had stepped through something not of this world. Then he hit the ground, his hands scraping against damp wooden planks. He had made it, but to where? Huang lay on the damp wooden floor, his breath ragged. His hands ached, scraped raw from the fall, but his eyes were fixed on the wooden gate ahead. It was slightly open, a dim glow flickered beyond it like a dying flame calling him forward. The mist behind him thickened, creeping around his legs, as if urging him to move. He turned back, but the alley he had escaped from was gone, replaced by endless darkness. There was no way back. Huang swallowed hard, his pulse thudding against his skull. The wooden gate stood silent, waiting. Then he saw them. Figures just beyond the gate, lurking in the mist, watching him. Their shapes twisted, barely visible, as if the fog itself was hiding them. A voice echoed from the other side, soft, almost melodic. "Enter." Huang hesitated, every fiber of his being screaming against it. But what choice did he have? He reached for the gate, his fingers trembling against the worn wood. It was cold, too cold. The moment he touched it, a sharp whisper rushed through his ears like wind through dead leaves. "Come." The gate creaked open wider, revealing a path leading deeper into the unknown. With no other way out, Huang took his first step forward. "Will you take the next step into the unknown?" Huang took slow, hesitant steps down the wooden pathway. The air felt heavy, thick, with something unseen pressing against his skin. Behind him, the wooden gate stood open, but there was no turning back now. The village had vanished, swallowed by the fog, as if it had never existed. Only the path remained. Lanterns flickered weakly along the sides of the wooden planks, their glow barely piercing the mist. The wood beneath his feet creaked as though whispering secrets long forgotten. A shadow moved in the fog ahead. Huang froze, his breath catching in his throat. Something was waiting for him. The mist shifted, swirling unnaturally, as if shaping itself into something familiar. Then he heard it, his own voice echoing from the mist. "Why did you come here?" Huang's body tensed, his mind spinning. Was he losing himself? Another shadow moved, this time closer. It whispered in a voice identical to his own. "There is no way back." Huang clenched his fists, forcing himself to keep moving forward. The path narrowed, twisting deeper into the unknown. Somewhere ahead, something was waiting for him, and he had no choice but to meet it. Huang stood at the edge of the wooden path. The mist before him churned, a thick, impenetrable wall stretching into nothingness. Behind him, the flickering lanterns cast faint, trembling light, but even their glow was fading. There was no more path ahead, just emptiness. His breath came in slow, shallow gasps as he stepped forward, his foot hovering over the void. A whisper surrounded him, soft yet suffocating. "You have come this far." The shadow swirled faster, wrapping around his legs, pulling him closer. Huang's body stiffened as he looked back one last time. The wooden gate was gone, the village no longer existed. There was never a way back. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Come home." Huang closed his eyes and stepped forward. The wooden planks beneath him vanished, swallowed by the mist. And then nothing, the village without a name had claimed another soul. Did he ever exist at all? Follow for more mysteries lurking in the fog.